I've just finished my first full season on WWE 2K23's MyGM mode and won on the hardest difficulty with the hardest settings by around 130,000 fans. But it all starts with a successful draft. So in this video, I'm breaking down the 5 or 6 things that you really need to know to have a good draft, because there are some really important things that you need to think about. The first thing we're going to do before we even look at who is in our draft pool is we're going to take our budget and minus 100,000 off it. The reason for this is because I recommend that you keep at least 100,000 in your budget to start the season with. This is for logistical upgrades, power cards, free agents or legends if you need to sign them. It's good to always have a little bit of money in the bank, so I recommend having at least $100,000. So if I take $100,000 off 2.75 million that I'm starting with and then divide it by 14, it gives me 189,000 and change. The reason I'm divided by 14 is because I recommend that you draft 14 superstars. This will depend a little bit on your initial plans. If you are NXT 2.0, for example, you're going to get to sign 3 free agents if you want for half the price using your power card. So you might get 11 or 12 if you were them, play the power card straight away and sign some cheaper free agents at the start. You might be able to get a legend, or you might plan to pick up a legend early on, so you might just get 13 or maybe 14 still, but keep a little bit more money in the bank. But what you need to know is that you need roughly at least 100,000 in the bank. Then you want to divide by the amount of people that you are going to draft. So I recommend getting 14. The reason for this is because you can put on 2 tag team matches in the first week, 2 singles matches, and fill out 2 of the 3 promo slots, or you could fill out 1 tag team, 1 triple threat, 2 singles matches, and all 3 of the promo slots. So that's why I recommend getting 14 to start with. You don't want too many, and you don't want too few, because you want to have good variety within your card. The next thing we're going to do is filter by stamina. I recommend looking at stamina more than anything else pretty much when you're drafting. You still need to make sure that you've got some popular picks, but stamina is the most important thing. So if we go down right to the bottom of this list, filtered by stamina, we can see some really popular superstars near the bottom. We've got Finn Balor, for example. He costs $244,000, but he only has 54 stamina, which means I would just never even consider drafting him. He's just not an option for me. I always want my superstars to have like a minimum of 60 and ideally more than that, as much as possible really, going into the first weeks. You don't want to be resting superstars early on. The reason for this is because every time you rest them, they lose popularity. So the first thing we're going to do, filtered by stamina, is look at who could be our headline act in the male division and female division, and we're going to look for some good rivalries within that. In this version of my draft, it looks like I've got a lot of female superstars that have really good stamina, so that is where I'm going to look to prioritize things. Importantly, what we're going to do is ignore specialists at this stage. Specialists are the worst class. The best class is Cruiser and Giants to face off against each other. The next best is Bruisers against Fighters. And the worst is Specialists. I'm not saying don't draft Specialists, but if you are going to draft them, we want to keep them for later in the draft because they're going to be our fallback options. So we're never going to prioritize a Specialist, ever. So the first thing we want to do is think about who could be our headline rivalry. I've already said that Giants against Cruisers is the best matchup, so we have Doudrop here who could be a good option with 90 stamina. What we would need for this is a perfect rivalry, so because she's a face Giant, we would need a heel Cruiser. However, we don't just need one heel Cruiser, we need to make sure there are more than one option. Why is this? Because we have rivals in our draft. What happens if our rival drafts the only other option that we had? So let's say we were going to get Doudrop here. We need to make sure we have multiple female heel Cruisers with good stamina. Scrolling down the list, I can see that we have Io Sky and Shotzi, 2 decent options. Io Sky would be the preferred option, but our rival could draft them, so we might have to pick up Shotzi as a backup. Do we have any other good options just in case both of those 2 were to go? Well, we do. We have Queen Zelina. Not ideal. It would be the lowest stamina option that we have. And yes, there is always the option of getting a face Cruiser. For example, we could get Roxanne Perez and do a role change promo to change her to a heel. However, a role change promo, if you don't need to use one, is a waste of a slot. So we always want to try and draft people that match up perfectly without needing to waste any promo slots. Another thing to consider here is that we already know we have Doudrop, who's a really good option. Io Sky is more expensive, more popular. She's probably going to be in higher demand within the draft. So what if we were to select Io Sky first? Is there going to be another good face Giant in the unlikely event that someone else drafts Doudrop? Well, it turns out that we do have another option. It's not perfect, but we would have a fallback in Raquel Rodriguez. So for those reasons, because I think Io Sky will be in higher demand, I'm going to draft her first, and then I have 2 fallback options for who she is going to face up against in her first rivalry. So Doudrop wasn't selected. We can just easily select her now, and we have our first female rivalry. We're going to move on to the men. What I always want to do is get a male and female rivalry right at the top of my card, so I know exactly who I'm going to be facing off against. We've already picked up a giant and a cruiser in the female division. Giants versus cruisers is the best class synergy to have. So we're going to look and see if we can do that again here. We can see at the top of our list, we've got Shanky. He's got 89 stamina, 50 popularity, which isn't the highest, but he's nice and affordable as well. So if we were to draft Shanky, would we have a good rival for him? And I can see here that we already have Commander Aziz, who's another face giant with good stamina and actually slightly better popularity, a little bit more expensive. And we're looking to see here if we have heel cruisers to see if we would have rivals for them. We have Cruz del Toro, who's not particularly good. He's not very popular. We have Santos Escobar, who is a much better option, but doesn't have the best stamina. And we have Noam Dar as well, who's less popular. And all the way down the list, not quite at my stamina threshold, but we have Joaquin Wilde, really not very popular at all. But we have a lot of good options here, which is really good for us. So we're going to go back up to the top. We're going to select the giant that we think is going to be the one in higher demand, which is obviously going to be the more popular one. So we're going to lock in Commander Aziz. Something else we could do here, let's say I really didn't know which one to pick. So we could have 2 really good options and we're not sure which one to go with. Or we could have 2 really bad options and we wouldn't know which one to go with. What we can do is look at the superstar info. We can see here that his morale is okay. He's satisfied. He's got 3 out of 5 promo skill. And we don't know if he's got any match specialties. Shanky, he's got 2 out of 5 promo skill, so a little bit lower. We don't know his match specialties either, but he's actually got a little bit better morale. Commander Aziz wasn't too bad in his morale, and he was a little bit better on the promo skill. We're going to select him, and we know that we're going to have a rival for him lined up for week 1. So it's our pick here because of the fact that we've selected some that are under our budget already. I'm going to go slightly over budget for this pick with Santos Escobar. His stamina isn't the highest, but he's just going to be the best matchup for Commander Aziz. What do we need to be looking at here? Well, we need to think about 2 things. Firstly, we want diverse cards. So we want to be able to put on cards that have different types of matchups. So we would perhaps look towards fighters and bruisers. But also, we need to think about future rivalries. We have 2 giants and 2 cruisers in the male and female division. Who are they going to be against in future rivalries? Well, ideally, we would have other superstars that are exactly the same classes as their current rivalries because it means they will have future rivalries already lined up. It also means we could put them into tag team rivalries against each other. When you're looking at tag team ideas, it is best to have exactly the same classes on the same side. So, for example, you would want 2 giants against 2 cruisers, heel against face. You don't want them to be 1 giant and 1 cruiser against 1 giant and 1 cruiser. Even with heel and face on opposite sides, it is nowhere near as good to have 1 of each as it is to have 2 of the same. So you want your bruisers against your fighters, your cruisers against your giants. It doesn't matter if it's singles or tag team. That is the way you want to do things. So we already know that we're going to be looking for more giants and more cruisers in future, but for this specific pick, I'm going to make sure we've got variety in our card, so I'm going to look for bruisers and fighters. It also gives us a little bit more leeway in case our rivals start to pick up the giants and the cruisers and stop us from picking up people who would have rivals. I can see here in the male division that we have 3 heel bruisers, which would all be good pickups. So we're going to look for a face fighter that can pair up against them. We have Dexter Loomis, who's not a terrible option. We have Shinsuke as well, who looks a good pick. He has slightly lower stamina, but much higher popularity. I think just to be on the safe side with our budget, I'm going to pick Dexter Loomis, and then I'm going to look to lock in one of our bruisers in the next pick. So we have 2 heel bruisers left. Austin Creed just got picked up. Shinsuke Nakamura also got picked up by one of our rivals. So we're left with Julius Creed or Solo Sikoa. Not much between them in the cost, so we'll look at the morale, the promo skill, etc. Satisfied, 3 out of 5. Optimistic, 3 out of 5. We're going to pick Julius Creed because he has higher stamina, 1 less popularity, but he's a little bit cheaper and he has better morale. So we're going to get Julius Creed and he will match up against Dexter Loomis. Now, what I was just saying about the future rivalries, we are going to start locking those in. So we're not going to pick up extra females just yet. We're going to look for our future rivalries. So what we need here is males that match exactly what we already drafted. So we're looking for heel cruisers, face giants, face fighters, heel bruisers. That's exactly what we need. So we already know that we have a heel bruiser option in Solo Sikoa, but would we have a face fighter to match up against him? Damian Priest doesn't look the best. And other than that, we don't actually have good stamina options, so we can't really lock those in right now. So could we look towards a cruiser and a giant instead? We would need a heel cruiser against a face giant. Well, we have a good face giant option in Shanky. Do we have other good heel cruiser options? Cruz del Toro still available. Noam Dar's still available as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to get Shanky. He becomes our second face giant on the roster. Both of our options are still available after our rivals have picked, so I'm going to go with the one that has higher stamina, higher popularity. They're both still really cheap, so why not go for the more expensive one? We lock him in, and now, because we already have plenty of options in the male division, we're going to move back to the female division, and we're going to look for a variety of different options. Do we have a different type of matchup? So do we have specialists? Do we have fighters versus bruisers? Or do we go down the same path of locking in future rivalries for Io Sky and for Doudrop? Well, for that to happen, we would need face giants. We have Raquel Rodriguez, who's not the best pick. And we would need heel cruisers. We have Shotzi, who looks pretty good. But we only have one option. And then Queen Zelina. So I think to be safe, we're not going to look for the cruisers and giants just yet. And we can pick them up a little bit later in the draft if we still have the chance to. I can see here that we have a lot of different fighter options. We actually don't have many bruisers at all. We only have two to be precise. We have Rhea Ripley and Nikita Lyons, and neither of them have amazing stamina. With that in mind, I'm going to look to pick up a fighter and a specialist, and they will probably become one of our early rivalries. It's not a perfect synergy matchup, but it is better to give ourselves multiple options within the draft than to pick someone and then not have a rivalry for them because someone has picked up someone that we actually wanted. I'm pretty sure that I'm still good on budget, so what I'm going to do is get Bayley here because I can already see we have plenty of good face options within fighters, within specialists. So Bayley is a little bit expensive, but good stamina, good popularity. We're going to lock her in. Bayley was a heel specialist. It's now our turn again, and we have the option to lock in a face specialist or a face fighter or a face bruiser. We already know there aren't many bruiser options. So what are our options here? Well, we have Zoe Stark, who's very affordable, but not very popular. We have Natalia, slightly more popular, but a lot less stamina. Or we have Nikita Ash, who is more popular, but has a lot less stamina. Again, Bayley actually has 90 stamina. So with this in mind, I'm actually going to draft Zoe Stark, even though she isn't as popular, just because we're going to be able to match up Bayley against Zoe Stark a number of times in the early weeks, because they've both got extremely high stamina. I now have 10 superstars on my roster. What I would normally do from here is try to pick up another 2 females and another 2 males, so that I would have 14 overall, and it would give me 8 males, 6 females. The reason that I prioritize males slightly more is just because there's more of them in the game, so it's a little bit easier to develop those rivalries. Because there are more men in the game, I'm going to actually draft the women next, because I'm going to have more options in the male division. We already know we're running out of options in the female division. There are a few different things I could do here. I could draft someone like Shotzi, for example, and hope to get a free agent or a legend that is a face giant to perfectly match up with her, but I never want to take a gamble with my draft. I always want to make sure the odds are in my favor. With that in mind, I'm going to look to pick up someone different. I've still got plenty of money. I still have around $974,000 that I can spend on my next 4 picks. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to pick up Carmella. We're running out of synergy options to match up with Carmella, but we're going to have someone that we can use as a fallback option. Not the best case scenario, but we have to do what we can. The beauty of the draft is that everyone is different. The randomly generated stamina really plays an important part. It makes everything have a real thought process behind it as well. Carmella is a high stamina heel fighter, so we would need a face specialist or a face bruiser. And would you believe it, our rivals have picked up in the last round all of the other potential options that we had that were specialists. So our only real option here is to pick up Nikita Lyons. So that's what we're going to have to do. We don't have any other choice. We're not going to gamble. We're not going to rely on free agents or legends because we don't know what will come up in the pool. So we're going to sign Nikita Lyons. That is why you always draft with future options in mind, because we've just seen there that the CPU, the 3 of them, they stole basically all of our other options away from us and left us with no other choice. We now have plenty of male options remaining for our final 2 picks. We already have 2 giants and 2 cruisers in the male division, so we don't need any more there. The ideal thing now would be to get another face fighter because we have Dexter Loomis, and a heel bruiser because we have Julius Creed. I can see that we have Solo Sikoa as a heel bruiser, but we only have Damian Priest as a face fighter. His stamina stamina is lower, but it does go over my 60 threshold, so I'm going to actually get Damian Priest here. The reason that I get Damian Priest at this point as a face fighter is because I want to get Solo Sikoa, a heel bruiser, but if he gets picked up, we can go on to pick up The Miz, Chad Gable, or Tommaso Ciampa as heel specialists. They wouldn't be the perfect matchup for him, but they wouldn't be terrible either. So we're going to get Damian Priest with this pick, and we're going to pick up one of those options that I just mentioned as we see the CPU draft Solo Sikoa. It's like they can hear me. Tommaso Ciampa gets picked up. I thought they were going to draft The Miz there as well. We needed The Miz or Chad Gable to still be available for our pick, and they fortunately are both still available. We've got plenty of money in the bank. So we have the choice here, really, to choose between The Miz, who's a lot more expensive than Chad Gable, but he has more popularity, but he has lower stamina. But who is he going to be facing up against? He's going to be facing up against Damian Priest, that already has slightly low stamina. So we're going to get The Miz because it doesn't matter too much, because they're going to need a rest at some point anyway. And I'm going to end the draft there. I have lots of money still in my budget, 322k, but in my opinion, that is a really good draft. So those are my tips for MyGM. Take your budget, minus 100k off it, and divide it by 14. Draft 14 people. Focus on stamina first as a priority, then focus on synergies. Make sure you're getting your synergies. You're planning for both the short term and the future rivalries as well. Popularity is important, but don't look at it too much. You don't want to get a whole roster of really low popularity people. That's not going to be good either. Make sure you've got some good like headline acts, some bigger investments, but some cheaper investments to balance them out as well. Make sure you're always drafting with multiple options in mind. If you don't know who to decide, then look at morale, look at promo skill, look at favored match types, but those things are the lower important stuff. If you found this video useful, you're going to really enjoy the next video that's on screen now that will help you out even more.